This is the second episode of my Elden Ring challenge run, where I try to complete the game with the worst possible consumables, this being stones and crystals. There are many reasons why they are so bad that I discussed in my previous video. After 54 hours of gameplay, I managed to beat Morgott, and I can finally proceed to the best location in the game, this being the Forbidden Lands. And the mountaintops of the giants, of course. I knew that I was severely unprepared for the fire giant, so I decided to go to the most dangerous location in the entire game, this being Alaska. But for that I had to defeat Commander Nile. But as you already guessed it, he was too strong. Not only because of his gigantic amount of HP, but mostly because of his summons that were a nuisance during the entire fight. So I decided to try and cheese him, but for some reason I couldn't do that. The glitch just didn't work. Then I tried doing the Stake of Marika respawn glitch, but it also didn't work. But there was yet another glitch using which you can access the consecrated snowfield. In order to execute this bug, all you have to do is come to this jump pad, jump forward, and then double jump to your left to avoid the death barrier, and then exit from the game and load back in. This glitch is extremely hard to do as the timing for your jump is very small, and it's quite annoying to get. Another issue I found with this is that I always respawned on the ledge of a mountain instead of the lower part of the area. But once you manage to get to this lower part, you just have to carefully make your way down from there and take the teleporter to Ordina. Of course, while I was here, I decided to activate the portal to the erdtree, and it was a pain. These magic archers are just insane. The strategy I ended up using was to first push the magic archers using some kind of magic projectile, and then peek out of a corner to throw rocks in their face. With this done, I could now finally get access to the erdtree. But you see, this wasn't the only reason why I wanted to get to the consecrated snowfield. That's because from here I can teleport to Mogwyn's palace to farm lots of runes. But of course I got invaded by a random NPC because you can't simply walk 5 meters in the consecrated snowfield without stumbling on a random boss. At this point you should already know that the main strategy I was utilizing to defeat invaders is to get a poison proc and then just run around waiting until they die. But as you understand, this is still not all, because I also have to defeat the sanguine noble in order to get to the teleporter. My first strategy was to lure a bear in order to damage him, but the bear was more interested in killing me instead. So I've gone back to the strategy of applying poison and then running in circles, which was way safer but also way longer, as it took me over 10 minutes to kill just a simple NPC. With this done, I now had access to the best farming methods in the entire game that I couldn't use, because crossbows are not rocks, and my crystals simply don't have the range to reach the bird. But this is actually fine, because you see, if you go right here, you will... Oh my god, stop invading me! Yeah, remember the bear strat I tried earlier? Well, I decided it will be a good idea to do the same exact thing, but with a bird. Life doesn't teach me anything now, does it? What was I saying is that if you jump on this mountain, there will be a small hole in which you can fall below the textures in order to farm lots of runes in a mere minute. Now that we have a good way to farm runes, all we need are talismans that are found at the erdtree. But for that I had to defeat Loretta. And you know me, instead of just learning the boss's moves and getting good, I decided to do other stuff instead. The first thing I did was upgrade my flasks to the max level, but unfortunately I was running out of golden seeds, which meant I had to defeat the worst boss in the history of From Software. Also, I realized that the name I gave to the footage where I get the seed from Kenneth can lead to many questions from the FBI agent watching me. Also, while farming runes, I realized that I was getting significantly less compared to my first time doing this glitch. But thankfully, if you jump on this rock near the red albinorics, when they'll try and attack you, they will simply fall off the ledge and die. Well, at least most of the time. You most likely know this farming method from that one Elden Ring pacifist challenge, which I severely dislike because I also wanted to do a pacifist challenge, but anyway. So with this newfound farming method, I proceeded to get 1 million runes. The majority of my points went into endurance, so I can finally get rid of Radagon's score seal that is significantly decreasing my defensive capabilities. And I also got the magic protection talisman. Now I was finally prepared to fight Loretta. And it was still a great challenge. Just like any horseman, Loretta is very agile and thus can easily dodge my attacks, which was elongating the fight even further. And also she really liked spamming this particular magic attack, which was obviously very annoying as I couldn't do anything while she was just spamming it. But the real problem began when Loretta switched into her second phase, because now she was shooting a total of 4 hours at a time, which would result in a direct insta-kill. And I really hated that because not only the attack is delayed, which makes it harder to dodge, but it doesn't even give you a chance if you fail to dodge it. But eventually Loretta goes down and I can finally get all the talismans I need. This being Marika's Score Seal and the Dragon Crest Great Shield. So now I can easily defeat the fire giant, right? Well, no. In fact, I didn't have enough damage and enough health to defeat him. Because the fire giant is, well, a giant, he deals a lot of damage when he hits. In addition to this, during his very dangerous attacks, I can't just run away because this is the only moment where I can put my gravity stone chunks to use. Because I didn't have enough damage, I decided to farm even more runes. Specifically 2 million to upgrade my intelligence. And also get the magic tier to boost my intelligence even further. Because even when we're talking about consumables, magic is still OP somehow. After this, I managed to get to the second phase, but I still didn't have enough resources to defeat him. And also, I hate this boss's fire attacks. No! Okay, I can explain. So you see, because to sprint you have to press W and space, and because I was moving to the right of the boss, I also had to press D, well, in order to move right. But in order to jump, I need to press F, and because I'm moving right, I'm constantly pressing D, and I had to stop moving right in order to jump. Basically, my argument here is that making the jump button F is the worst decision made by any company in the history of video games. Because I still didn't have enough damage, I decided to farm even more until I was level 200, which took me 7.5 million runes. And as you probably understand, this took me a really long time. Obviously, all points were assigned into strength and intelligence to increase my damage. I've also acquired the Blessed Dew talisman as the fights were getting really long and it was helping out a lot. And this felt like the run. Fire Giant had only a fraction of his health left, but I also run out of easily farmable consumables and switched to large glinstone scrap, which is really hard to farm. But I've encountered another problem that I didn't think about at all. I run out of mana. Normally I would just go and farm even more runes to upgrade my FP, but I was just really getting tired. And I knew that the amount of crystals I have left will be simply not enough to defeat the fire giant. So I simply skipped him. Yeah, you see, if you go on this rock right here and double jump with torrent, you can get on the other side of the fog wall. This skip isn't easy. It took me many attempts, but eventually I managed to teleport to Faramazula. Oh, and if you think that this is breaking the rules of the challenge and that I failed the run because of that, please send your complaints to my official email that you currently see on your screens right now. This meant that the next big obstacle I had to overcome will be the Godskin Duo, which consisted of a walking hinkali on legs and a spaghetti noodle. I have no idea why all of these are related to food, okay? And this fight was actually pretty good and enjoyable, dare I say it. Maybe From Software changed this boss, which I really doubt, or using ranged weapons during this fight makes such a big difference. So next time you're struggling with this boss, try and use ranged spells or Ashes of War instead. Obviously I was still dying now and then, but it was way more interesting than the fight with the fire giant. Mostly because I actually had a plan in order to defeat this boss. You see, during the entirety of the challenge, the main two problems were that bosses can dodge and can easily hit me because of my slow attack animation. While I couldn't do anything about the last problem, I could completely get rid of the boss's ability to dodge by just simply focusing on the fat guy. As unlike his friend, he just tanks all the damage. Something that I, unfortunately, can't do. But focusing only one boss was also an issue because my camera was always pointing towards the walking donut, which meant that Slenderman could simply creep up on me and hit me while I didn't even see him. Also, whenever I was killing the melted plastic bottle, I had to attack Skinny, which, looking back at my previous decisions, wasn't the best of idea, as most of the time the poison proc will lead to his second phase, which I obviously don't want because I have no idea how to dodge it. In the previous episode I tried beating this man on his own and still failed, and now he has another extra hazard I had to watch out for. Speaking of which, the giant plastic bag also changes his moveset when his health reaches 50%. One of these attacks consists of him rolling. And for me personally, this is the hardest move to dodge, but I can turn this attack into my favor by getting on top of the destroyed pillars, because, well, most of the time he can't get on top of them. This fight turned out to be way easier than I anticipated. But what I didn't anticipate was how impossibly difficult would be Malekith. The first phase was very simple, as he was very slow and nearly not aggressive at all, but the second portion of the fight was a real nightmare. Because it is not only revealed to us that Malekith is a furry, but also that he is faster than a Formula 1 car. The speed and agility of this boss are absolutely insane. He closes the gap between you in a matter of seconds and looks more similar to a orangutan than a dog because of how much he jumps around. And that's not all. because he apparently also installed a wall hack that allows him to attack me through pillars. Like how? Isn't the main strat that everybody uses is to hide behind these pillars so he doesn't hit you? But even if we consider all that, the fight is still fine because the boss has punishable attacks during which you can barely manage to land a shot. But the problem is that throwing consumables is a very long animation, so by the time I reach to my pocket and throw the stone at him, he will be already at the other side of the arena watching me die from the debuff. But all of that is still not the reason why I consider Maliketh the hardest boss in the entire game. You see, the reason many people consider Malenia the hardest boss is because of the waterfall dance, that is very hard to dodge. But Maliketh has also a overpowered attack that is really hard to dodge, that is called Destined Death. And unlike Malenia, he executes it very often. In fact, during all my 22 attempts on this boss, I died from this one specific attack 20 times. That is more than 95% of all my runs being ruined by this one move. Something that I can't say for Malenia because her attack is, in fact, quite easily dodgeable. And you're probably wondering why I can't get the Blasphemous Claw, as it makes this challenge significantly easier. Well, you see, in order to get the Blasphemous Claw, I have to defeat Bernal, but he spawns in Farum Azula only after I defeat Rykard. And in case you didn't know, Rykard has 2 times more health than the Fire Giant, which means that I definitely can't get the Blasphemous Claw. So to recap, I have to somehow deal damage to a boss that runs super quickly, jumps around every single time, and executes an attack every 5 seconds that hits like a truck and decreases my max health, and applies a debuff that decreases my health even further, not allowing me to heal immediately. Oh, and did you know that this man can dodge my projectiles as well? Not only that, but he is also so fast that even magic, homing projectiles can't catch up with him. I hate it so much that when people talk about the hardest bosses in Elden Ring, everybody mentions Malenia. Everybody talks about how the Godskin Duo is unfair. But no one mentions Maliketh. At least the Godskin Duo doesn't run around at the speed of Naruto. I can genuinely make a 1 hour long video explaining why Maliketh is the hardest boss in the entire game. You know what? I think I will actually do that one time. Maybe for my 10,000 subscriber special or something. Yeah, instead of writing a couple more paragraphs explaining how bad this boss is, I will just make a full-blown analysis in a separate video of every single moves this boss has. After a lot of time, I managed to defeat this boss. The Holy Protection Talisman was helping a little bit, but it still boiled down to a no-hit run. This horrendous, this awful, this I don't know, my knowledge of the English language is just simply way too limited to explain all my frustration I faced when fighting this boss. 5 hours, it took me 5 hours to get rid of him. Thankfully, the next boss was Gideon, who is widely regarded as the easiest boss in the entire game, so I could just simply... Oh no, not again! You see, whenever I wanted to attack an NPC, I was just running right in front of them and throwing rocks in their face so they can't dodge it. And this strategy seemed to work pretty well because they were focused on melee and didn't use any magic. And even if they did, I was like 70 levels higher than them, so I simply didn't care. But Gideon really likes to spam attacks. So much so you can't even get close to him. Also, because after every single death I have to go and restock on my consumables, this meant that every single time I fail, I will have to walk this entire distance just to try again, which is even more insulting than what I had to do with Malekith. Gideon, just like any enemy, sometimes had moments when he would stand still and let me get a hit. And this is what I used to apply poison and then just simply hide behind a pillar where he couldn't reach me. But I could using my magic crystals. Although when I ran out of them, it was actually quite scary to see Gideon slowly approach me from a corner with 50 blades stacked on top of each other. During the entirety of this fight, I was just hiding behind pillars and peeking out only to make a shot and hide back from these awful ring blades. Seriously, if Gideon didn't have this one incantation, this fight would be so much easier. After a lot of running around and hiding behind walls, Gideon fell, which, as you guessed it, didn't take all that long. But the next boss was Godfrey, and I didn't realize how hard this boss would be. You might remember how in the previous episode I said that Godfrey was my favorite boss, and that's true. I completed the first phase of this boss on my first try. But then I saw Horaloo. And remember everything I said about Malekith, his speed, and simply overpowered attacks? Well, I have the same exact problem with this fight as well. Horaloo is also extremely quick, can dodge, and throws you around like a volleyball. This fight really required me to dodge the boss for 2 whole minutes just to make one single shot. But worst of all, with every failed attempt, I was somehow getting worse at this fight instead of improving. So I decided to take a break and go do Volcano Manor quests. They were pretty easy except the one in Siberia, that was pretty close. The reason why I did all of that is so I could progress Patch's questline and get the Bull Goal set. Of course, I had to change my talisman loadout in order to be in medium load. I also tried defeating Mohg, and I have no idea what I was thinking about. As you guessed it, I failed. Mohg simply has way too much health. And after a 2-day break, Horaloo felt very easy. Mostly because I've managed to learn the timing of his attacks and try taking this fight slower instead of rushing it. Turns out you just have to take a break in order to defeat a boss, which is very strange and extremely illogical, but okay. My gameplay time was nearly 100 hours, which is just insane. Now I just had to defeat the final boss, and here the problems began. You see, the final battle is composed of Radagon and the Elden Beast. Radagon has a total of 13,000 health and can parry my projectiles. So I not only deal decreased damage, but I also receive a portion of holy beams in the face. The Elden Beast has around 22,000 health and is completely immune to any status effects, which means that I can't deal poison damage, which still, even in the very end game, was my primary source of dealing damage. After doing many intricate and big brain calculations, I've come to the conclusion that the damage of all my stones and crystals wasn't enough to defeat the Elden Beast alone, without counting Radagon, so it was time to change the rules. For the first time in this challenge, I allow myself to buff my damage and use the Mimic tier. Obviously, the Mimic tier doesn't just use consumables. In fact, most of the time he will try and do fisting on the enemy. But I think you all understand that fists in Elden Ring deal no damage, and it would be a miracle if the Mimic manages to do more damage than 100 during this entire fight. The only reason why I was using him is to distract Radagon so he doesn't parry my attacks. As for the buffs, I got Flame Grant Me Strength, Golden Vow, and Terra Magica that I've acquired after defeating the Crystalian duo. But with all of that, the fight was still quite difficult as the Elden Beast really likes running away and uses his Holy Nuke ability. But unfortunately, my amount of damage was still not enough, and I guess I have to take in the fact that this challenge is impossible. I know I can spend a couple more months farming runes and learning how to no-hit this boss, but I don't think it will be worth the effort as my previous video got only 200 views in 1 week, which compared to my other videos is just awful. And if you're one of the 5 people that are still watching this, I'm sorry that I've disappointed you, but I can't do this anymore. I just can't.